Hello everyone, it's lovely to be here. When I told my daughters that I was coming to the zoo to do a talk this afternoon, they thought I was going to be talking to the animals. So if you can respond better than the animals might do, that would be good. Right, so I've gone slightly rogue and given myself a different title to the one in the brochure. The reason for that is that I thought Ella was doing such a good job of explaining why framing matters and what it is, that I wanted to get really stuck into this question of how to do framing and to give you some tools that I hope you can take away and I hope can be useful. So to start with, how to do framing research. So at Frameworks we study two things. We study why people think the things that they think, and we study what changes the things that people think. So we've got about 30 social science geeks using a range of methods to provide kind of robust and empirical answers to these questions. And because we've done lots of work here in the UK on a wide range of issues, we've got the sort of precise framing strategies for different issues do vary, but there's some general principles that we can apply in our work, whatever issue we're doing, assuming we're trying to change practice and change policy. There are some general kind of framing for change principles that I wanted to share with you. So because we don't have much time, I've whittled it down to 3 key killer framing principles. And the first one is all about change, talking about change. So I assume we're all here because we want to change something, probably lots of things, ideally. And when we sort of map public thinking on the different issues that we look at, there's always a consistent challenge when it comes to change, and that is fatalism. So whether we're looking at climate change, poverty, children's health, criminal justice, fatalism is always one of the biggest barriers to us being able to advance the solutions that we're looking to land. So this kind of hopelessness and this sense that this widespread belief that problems are insurmountable impedes our ability to advance workable solutions and policy change across the board. And there's a few different reasons for this, and I'm going to focus on 2 of them. One of them is our brains, our human brains, and that change is very hard for us to think about. My social science colleagues refer to the frugality of cognition, which basically means that our brains are really lazy. And if you think about the recent kind of change campaigns that have been successful, some of them, they've kind of taken the sting out of a change message. So take back control and make America great again. They ease the cognitive burden of a change message by making this about reverting to the past. And for many people, kind of reverting to a mythical past was easier than being pitched into an uncertain future. So when we're thinking about the work that we do in this room, which is somewhat removed from that, there's another reason that change messages can be so hard to get across. And that is that we actively play into the fatalism that people already have and already bring to our issues. So the idea that this matters, and like Ella, I've been in this space, I've been communicating so intensely to try to get people to care about something, and that message that this really matters becomes, this is really bad, and this is really bad becomes, this is really, really bad, and somehow we end up with just this abject fatalism being kind of put out there over and over again, and problems feel completely unsolvable. So this is a kind of confession as much as it is holding up a mirror. But the truth is that the diagnosis of a problem, because this is all true, no one's denying this is all true, but the diagnosis of a problem is not the same as a communication strategy. And research across the board shows very strongly that we need to be putting solutions centre stage. So this is one of my favourite eco headlines of recent years, how renewable energy became unstoppable. And the reason I like this is not because the solution is centre stage, but because it's actually making the solution inevitable and normal. This is the normal thing, not the old dinosaurs that are holding us back. This is the new normal. And this style of communicating helps overcome that cognitive burden around change. I also really like this relatively recent campaign from Ben & Jerry's in Australia, I think, renewable is doable. At Frameworks we call this a pragmatism frame, so it's a kind of no-nonsense, can-do approach to really inoculating against that fatalism that's so dominant. So if that hasn't persuaded you, I've got some really super cool framing data to show you now. So this is from the bit of our research when we test different frames. We've mapped public thinking, and we actually know what we're trying to overcome in terms of the dominant patterns of thinking. And we are looking at what works, what messages work to navigate public thinking on an issue. And the way that we test different messages is that we are testing different versions of a message against a control group who hears nothing. So what we're able to do is we're able to gauge the impact of people hearing different messages. And we're looking for lots of different outcomes when we go through this process. We're looking for whether this message makes someone think an issue is more of a priority. Do they think the issue is a problem? Do they think it matters? Can they see solutions? Or do they feel very fatalistic? Is change possible? So in this instance, this was some of the work that you're going to hear more about from Abigail, which is our work on poverty in the UK. And we were comparing the effects of talking about benefits as a solution versus talking about benefits as a problem. So benefits as a problem was all about how cuts to the benefit system are resulting in widespread suffering, and then that's not acceptable. Benefits as a solution was talking about how benefits can help to free people from the grip of poverty, and that we need a robust system to do that job. And when we compared the effects of these two different messages, what we found is that the benefits as problem message delivered no statistically significant effects. So basically that meant that it was indistinguishable from the control group who heard nothing. So it was as good as saying nothing, effectively, statistically speaking. When we used the benefits as a solution message, we had statistically significant effects across the board. So what this was doing as a message, it was helping people to see that poverty exists, to believe it's a problem, to want to solve it, to believe it can be solved, and to support the type of solutions that advocates in this space were pushing for. So, in summary, on this idea of how we communicate change, we need to move from saying this is really bad to pointing out that the solutions are out there and that they are available, inevitable, and common sense. So, second big challenge when it comes to framing for change is how we deal with talking about individual behaviour. As Ella kind of alluded to, this can be really challenging because we need people to be thinking about systems and systemic change, not just the role of one actor within that. And how you talk about individual behaviour is really challenging, whether you're talking about poverty and people overcoming adversity, or you're talking about environmental behaviour change. And generally, stories with a really narrow focus on an individual can backfire and draw attention away from the systemic changes that we're seeking, which is a shame, because actually as human beings we like stories about people. And there's nothing wrong with liking stories about people. We like hearing stories about people and the difference that they can make through hard work and grit and determination, and sometimes through magical thinking and imagination. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it does create problems when we're sort of modelling that approach in communicating and advocating for social change. So my sort of shortcut how to frame through this solution here is that we need to always show people in context. Don't miss out the things that surround people and the circumstances that surround people when you're talking about individual behaviour or individual stories. And I like to kind of sum this up as moving from choices to options. So when we talk about choices, you're focusing on the individual and the individual acting alone without context, what's going on inside that individual. When we talk about options, we're thinking about what's around the individual and how they're responding to that, which is actually a more accurate way of presenting how the world works. And I think that this principle can apply to lots of different communications challenges, whether it's telling individual stories about someone's journey or advocating for different types of behaviours. So my third and final principle is framing with friends. When we're trying to advance new ways of thinking and new frames, we need people to hear the same ideas a lot. We need what we call a framework, a high dose of those ideas. We need to get them out there over and over again. And yet, when we work as sectors on particular issues, the stories that we tell often look a bit like this. So we tell competing stories that don't make for coherent narratives or improved understanding. In fact, they make for incoherence and confusion in terms of how people hear them. And the solution isn't that we all go about saying exactly the same thing in exactly the same way, robotically, but it's that we advance different versions of the same core story. And that we know through doing this that we're being powerful and we're moving things in the right direction. So we need to go from cacophony to symphony. And the great news is that we know that this can be done. And we know that when it does happen, it works. And that looks a bit like this. So these are all taken from the various different campaigns for equal marriage in the US, which were strongly driven by framing research. So I'm going to finish with a quote now that sums up for me why I do this work and why I think it matters and how powerful, as Ella says, I think we can all be in this room. And it's from George Eliot. And George Eliot says, "I'll tell you what's the greatest power under heaven, and that is public opinion, the ruling belief in society about what is honourable and what is shameful. That's the steam that is to work the engines." That's it from me. Pass on to Abigail.